The chandelier alone cost more than Elena Vasquez would earn in 5 lifetimes. She knew this because she had looked it up once, in a moment of masochistic curiosity, while waiting for a party of hedge fund managers to finish their 3rd bottle of Dom Pérignon. Baccarat, custom, $240,000 of hand-cut crystal hanging above men who complained about the temperature of their water. Tonight, she moved through the presidential suite of the Waldorf Astoria with the practiced invisibility of someone who had learned, through years of necessity, how to become furniture. Her black uniform was spotless, her dark hair pulled back so tight it ached, her eyes cast downward in the universal posture of servitude. The suite sprawled across 3,000 square feet of Manhattan real estate, its windows offering a view of Park Avenue that most people only saw in photographs, silk wallpaper, antique furniture that had once belonged to European nobility, a Steinway grand piano that no one ever played. Elena set down a tray of canapes, Wagyu beef tartare with gold leaf, because of course there was gold leaf, and retreated to her invisible corner near the service entrance. From here, she could observe without being observed, a skill she had perfected during countless events exactly like this one. In another life, she had been Dr. Elena Vasquez, Ph.D. in comparative linguistics from Columbia, specialization in ancient Semitic languages and cryptographic analysis. Her dissertation on the evolution of Aramaic legal terminology had been published by Cambridge University Press. Her professors had called her once in a generation. That was before her father's cancer, before the insurance company found a technicality, before the medical bills consumed everything, the savings, the fellowship, the future, before she had to choose between finishing her postdoctoral research and keeping her father alive for 6 more months. She chose her father. He died anyway. Now she owed $347,000 to various creditors. Her academic career was a smoking crater, and she served gold leaf beef to people who wouldn't notice if she burst into flames. The interest alone was $2,800 a month. She made $18 an hour plus tips when the rich remembered that service workers were human beings. Tonight's event was different from the usual corporate bacchanalia. The men in this room weren't merely wealthy. They were the architects of wealth itself. Private equity, sovereign wealth funds, family offices that managed fortunes older than most nations. The kind of money that didn't just buy things, but bought reality. Elena's trained ear caught fragments of conversation as she circulated. Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, the polyglot music of global capital. She understood all of it, 7 languages fluently, 12 more at working proficiency. But she kept her face blank, her movements mechanical. No one looked at the help. No one ever looked at the help. She paused near the window, allowing herself a moment to gaze at the city below. Somewhere out there, in a cramped studio apartment in Washington Heights, her research notes gathered dust. 12 years of work on a groundbreaking analysis of ancient Near Eastern contract law, a book that would never be written, a voice that would never be heard. She had become what the world expected her to be, invisible, silent, small, a ghost in a black uniform, haunting the margins of other people's lives. The energy in the room shifted like a change in the atmospheric pressure. Conversations died. Glasses paused mid-lift. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Marcus Ashford had arrived. Elena had read about him, of course. Everyone had. Ashford Capital managed $340 billion in assets. His personal net worth was estimated at $47 billion, though the actual figure was likely higher. Men like Ashford had ways of making money invisible even to Forbes. He had built his empire on a single ruthless insight, that ancient artifacts weren't just cultural treasures, but financial instruments, stores of value that appreciated faster than any stock and carried none of the regulatory oversight. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from private islands rather than tanning beds. His suit probably cost more than her annual salary. His watch, a Patek Philippe Sky Moon Tourbillon, was worth more than her debt. Behind him came his entourage, a phalanx of lawyers, assistants, and security personnel who moved with the synchronized precision of a military unit. And at his right hand, carrying a leather attaché case like it contained nuclear codes, was a thin, nervous man in wire-rimmed glasses. Ashford, to the room. "Gentlemen, thank you for accommodating my schedule. I know a Sunday evening is unconventional, but what I'm about to show you couldn't wait for business hours." He moved to the center of the room, where a long mahogany table had been cleared and covered with black velvet. The nervous man, Dr. Heinrich Brenner, according to the name tag Elena glimpsed, began unpacking the attaché case with trembling reverence. "Ashford, What you're about to see has been in private hands for over a century. It has never been displayed publicly, never been authenticated by any major institution, and until 6 months ago, its very existence was considered a myth. From the case, Dr. Brenner withdrew a glass display box. Inside, resting on a cushion of archival foam, lay a fragment of parchment perhaps 8 inches square. Even from her corner, ELENA could see that it was old, genuinely, impossibly old. The material had the distinctive amber patina of ancient animal skin. Ashford. Gentlemen, I present to you the Ashford Codex, a previously unknown fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls containing a complete copy of the Testament of Solomon, a text that, until now, existed only in fragmentary medieval copies. The room erupted in murmurs. ELENA felt her heart rate accelerate. The Dead Sea. Though scrolls were among the most important archaeological discoveries in human history. If this was genuine, it would rewrite everything scholars knew about Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity. Saudi investor in Arabic, and you can prove its authenticity? Ashford responding in flawless Arabic. Dr. Brenner is one of the world's foremost experts in ancient Hebrew paleography. He has conducted extensive analysis. Dr. Brenner stepped forward, clearing his throat. Dr. Brenner, the parchment has been carbon dated to approximately 150 BCE, consistent with the Qumran community's period of activity. The ink composition matches known samples from the Dead Sea caves. The Hebrew script is consistent with the late Hasmonean period. I have prepared a comprehensive authentication report. He distributed thick-bound documents to each investor. ELENA, refilling water glasses nearby, managed to glimpse the cover page. Authentication analysis. The Ashford Codex. Dr. Heinrich Brenner, Ph.D., Institute for Ancient Textual Studies. Ashford. I'm offering a consortium opportunity, a $200 million acquisition split among this group. The codex will be donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, ensuring each investor receives the maximum charitable tax deduction while gaining naming rights to the Ashford wing of biblical antiquities. Chinese investor in Mandarin. And if questions arise about provenance, Ashford, switching to Mandarin. The documentation is impeccable. My family acquired this piece in 1923 from a Bedouin trader, decades before the official Qumran discoveries. We have letters, receipts, customs records. Every question has been anticipated. ELENA moved closer, drawn by professional instinct. In her doctoral work, she had spent 3 years analyzing the linguistic patterns of Dead Sea Scroll fragments. She knew their cadences the way a musician knows a familiar symphony. Something was wrong. She couldn't see the text clearly from her position. But what she could glimpse of the letter forms looked off. The scribal hand was too regular, too uniform. Authentic ancient manuscripts showed natural variation. Scribes got tired, ink consistency changed, hands cramped. This looked mechanical. Ashford, noticing ELENA nearby. You, girl, more champagne, and perhaps stand somewhere less obtrusive. ELENA lowered her eyes, nodded, retreated, but not before she saw something that made her blood run cold. A single word, partially visible through the display glass. A word that shouldn't exist. ELENA's hands trembled as she poured champagne into fresh flutes. Her mind raced through databases of ancient Hebrew orthography, cross-referencing what she had seen against 12 years of accumulated expertise. The word was kshivbi, ketovet, meaning inscription or writing. But the spelling was wrong. The document used a vav, where ancient Hebrew would have used a waw, a distinction that only emerged in medieval Tiberian pointing. In the 2nd century BCE, that orthographic convention simply didn't exist. It was like finding a document supposedly written by Shakespeare that used American spellings. She needed to see more. She needed to be certain. ELENA slipped back into the main room, this time positioning herself near the display table under the pretense of collecting empty glasses. Dr. Brenner was fielding technical questions from the investors, his voice carrying the brittle confidence of a man reciting memorized lines. Dr. Brenner. The Testament of Solomon, as preserved in this codex, represents the earliest known version of the text. Notice the distinctive Qumranic script characteristics, the elongated lamed, the curved bet, the characteristically squat mem. ELENA leaned closer, ostensibly reaching for an abandoned napkin. Now she could see the full text. Her heart stopped. The errors multiplied before her eyes like bacteria in a petri dish. The word order followed modern Hebrew syntax, not the ancient construct chain patterns that would have been standard in the Hasmonean period. The verb forms used plain spelling conventions that weren't standardized until centuries later. The letter shin appeared in its post-Masoretic form, with the three-pronged crown that medieval scribes had added for clarity. This wasn't a Dead Sea Scroll. This was a modern forgery, probably created within the last 50 years, by someone who knew enough Hebrew to be dangerous, but not enough to fool an expert. Except, there were no experts in the room. Not real ones. Dr. Brenner's analysis was theater, his credentials likely fabricated. ELENA had never heard of the Institute for Ancient Textual Studies, and she knew every major center of Dead Sea Scrolls scholarship in the world. $200 million. These men were about to pay $200 million for an elaborate fake. She retreated to her corner, mind spinning. What was she supposed to do? She was nobody, a waitress, a debtor, a ghost. These were billionaires, heads of sovereign wealth funds, men who moved markets with a phone call. They had lawyers, experts, due diligence teams. Who would believe her? She thought of her father, of the insurance company that had denied his claim based on a technicality buried in 60 pages of legal jargon, of the way powerful institutions crushed ordinary people simply because they could. She thought of Dr. Brenner's nervous smile, of Ashford's smug certainty, of the way he had called her girl and told her to stand somewhere less obtrusive. She thought of the $347,000 she owed, of the cramped apartment, of the research notes gathering dust, of everything she had lost and everything she had been forced to become. And something shifted inside her, something that had been dormant for years, buried under grief and exhaustion and survival mode, began to stir. She was still Dr. ELENA VOLKOV. She had spent 12 years mastering languages that had been dead for 2,000 years. She had reconstructed fragmentary texts that had defeated entire teams of scholars. She had been called once in a generation. The world had tried to make her invisible, but knowledge doesn't disappear just because people stop looking at you. She straightened her spine, she lifted her eyes, and she began to walk toward the table where Marcus Ashford was about to commit the most elaborate fraud of his career. Ashford. So, gentlemen, I propose we finalize the consortium agreement tonight. My lawyers have prepared. ELENA, clear, steady. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Ashford, but before anyone signs anything, there's something these gentlemen need to know. The room went silent. Every head turned toward the waitress who had suddenly materialized at the edge of the table, champagne tray still in hand. Ashford, ice cold. I believe I told you to make yourself scarce. Get your manager, now. ELENA, in a moment. First, I'd like to ask Dr. Brenner a question. She set down her tray, stepped closer to the display case. Her voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with the intensity of someone who had spent years waiting for exactly this moment. ELENA, in Hebrew. Dr. Brenner, can you explain why this supposedly 2nd century BCE manuscript uses medieval Tiberian orthography? Brenner's face went pale. I don't understand what you're... ELENA, the word cativet in line 3. The Vav Matres Lectionis. That convention didn't emerge until the 6th century CE at the earliest. The Dead Sea Scrolls used defective spelling. It's one of their most distinctive features. Ashford, laughing. Gentlemen, I apologize for this interruption. Clearly our waitress has been reading too many Wikipedia articles. Security, ELENA cutting him off. I spent 3 years analyzing Dead Sea Scroll fragments at Columbia University. My dissertation on Aramaic legal terminology in Second Temple Judaism was published by Cambridge. I can read every language on this document, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that it was written by someone who learned Hebrew from a modern textbook, not from ancient immersion. The Saudi investor leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Saudi investor, in Arabic, let her speak. What else have you noticed? ELENA, responding in flawless Arabic. The syntax follows modern Hebrew word order. Subject, verb, object. Ancient Hebrew used verb-subject-object construction. The letter forms, which Dr. Brenner described as characteristically Qumranic, are actually based on a typeface created by the Hebrew University in 1965 for teaching purposes. And the Testament of Solomon, it wasn't written in Hebrew at all. The original was composed in Greek, probably in the 1st century CE. There's no Hebrew version because there was never a Hebrew version. Dr. Brenner, sweating. This is absurd. I've spent 30 years, ELENA. The Institute for Ancient Textual Studies doesn't exist. I checked. There's no record of you in any academic database, no publications, no conference presentations. You're Authentication report cites carbon dating from a lab that closed in 1987. It references a spectroscopic analysis technique that wasn't invented until 2003. She turned to face the investors directly, her voice ringing with the clarity of someone who had been silent for far too long. ELENA, in Mandarin, to the Chinese investor. The provenance letters Mr. Ashford mentioned? I'd bet my life they're forgeries too. The Bedouin trader story is a classic. It's exactly how forgers have been laundering fake scrolls since the 1950s. Ashford, voice rising. This is outrageous. I'll have you arrested. I'll sue you into oblivion. Do you have any idea who I am? ELENA, meeting his eyes. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Ashford. You're a man who assumed that because I wear this uniform, I must be ignorant. You looked at me and saw nothing. No education, no expertise, no threat. You saw furniture. She picked up his authentication report and turned to a marked page. ELENA, page 47. Dr. Brenner claims the parchment shows characteristic Qumran binding holes. But the Dead Sea Scrolls weren't bound. They were rolled. Binding holes are a medieval innovation. This document was made to look old by someone who had never actually held an authentic ancient manuscript. Brenner's face had gone gray. He clutched the edge of the table, as if to keep from collapsing. Saudi investor, standing. I want independent verification. Tonight, my people will contact the Israel Antiquities Authority directly. Chinese investor, also standing. And I want to see those provenance documents examined by forensic specialists. Not your specialists, Ashford, real ones. Ashford, cornered, desperate. Gentlemen, please, you're going to take the word of a waitress over. ELENA. I'm not a waitress. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. ELENA, I'm Dr. ELENA VOLKOV. I served tables to pay off my father's medical debt. But I was trained by Emmanuel Tov, studied under Elisha Qimron, and spent 12 years of my life learning to distinguish authentic ancient manuscripts from clever fakes. And, Mr. Ashford, she leaned close enough to smell his cologne. ELENA, this is not a clever fake. This is amateur hour, and you just tried to sell it for $200 million. The next 2 hours were chaos. The Saudi investors' security team produced a satellite phone and connected directly with the head of the Israel Antiquities Authority's fraud division. Within 40 minutes, they had confirmation. The Ashford Codex had never been submitted for official authentication, and the carbon dating certificate Brenner had presented was from a laboratory that had never tested the sample. The Chinese investors' lawyers, who had apparently been on standby at a nearby hotel, arrived with forensic document specialists. Under ultraviolet light, the parchment revealed the telltale fluorescence of modern tanning chemicals, a dead giveaway of 20th century manufacture. Dr. Brenner broke. First, cornered by lawyers and faced with the prospect of federal fraud charges, he began to sob, admitting that he had been paid $500,000 by Ashford to create a fake authentication. His real name was Harold Brennan. He had a master's degree in religious studies from an online university and had worked as a Bible tour guide in Israel before Ashford recruited him. Marcus Ashford watched his empire crumble in real time. His investors withdrew. His lawyers distanced themselves. His phone buzzed with messages from board members demanding emergency meetings. By midnight, 2 FBI agents had arrived, alerted by the Saudi embassy's security attaché. Ashford Capital's offices would be raided by morning. The Ashford Codex was sealed as evidence. As security escorted Ashford toward the elevator, he paused, turned, looked at ELENA with an expression somewhere between hatred and disbelief. Ashford, quietly, you've destroyed everything. My reputation, my company, my legacy, all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. ELENA, no, Mr. Ashford, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. She held his gaze until the elevator doors closed. Then finally she let herself breathe. The room had emptied. The investigators had departed with their evidence. The investors had retreated to their penthouses to reassess everything they thought they knew about due diligence. Only one man remained. Prince Khalid bin Rashid Al Faisal, the Saudi investor, sat in one of the suite's wingback chairs, studying ELENA with the focused attention of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected millions of lives. Prince Khalid, in Arabic, sit, please. We have much to discuss. ELENA hesitated. She was still wearing her uniform. Her feet ached from hours of standing. Every instinct told her she didn't belong in that chair, in this conversation, in this world, but she sat anyway. Prince Khalid. I have a question for you, Dr. Vasquez, a personal one if you'll permit me. She nodded. Prince Khalid, how does someone with your credentials, Columbia, Cambridge, training under the greatest scholars in the field, end up serving champagne to men like Marcus Ashford? The question hung in the air. Elena felt the familiar shame rise in her chest, the shame of falling, of failing, of becoming something less than what she was meant to be. But tonight, for the first time in years, she didn't look away. Elena. My father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer during my postdoctoral fellowship. Stage 4. The insurance company denied his treatment, said his policy had a pre-existing conditions exclusion buried in the fine print. She paused, steadying herself. Elena. I fought them for 8 months, used every resource I had, lawyers, appeals, media pressure. By the time I got the decision reversed, I was $200,000 in debt, and my fellowship had been given to someone else. My father lived another 6 months. He died holding my hand in a hospital room that cost $4,000 a night. Prince Khalid and the debt? Elena, $347,000 now, with interest. I make $80 an hour. Do the math. The prince was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Prince Khalid. My family's foundation oversees the largest collection of ancient Near Eastern manuscripts in the Middle East. We employ 40 scholars, conservators, and researchers across 3 countries. We've spent $2 billion over the past decade acquiring, preserving, and studying texts that would otherwise be lost to history or sold to criminals like Ashford. He leaned forward. Prince Khalid, tonight, you saved my family $50 million and exposed a fraud that could have embarrassed us on the world stage. You did this without hesitation, without leverage, without any expectation of reward. You did it because it was right. Elena, quietly, I did it because I couldn't not do it. That document was an insult to everything I've spent my life studying. Prince Khalid, exactly. That's exactly what I need. Prince Khalid withdrew a card from his jacket pocket, thick, cream-colored, embossed with gold Arabic calligraphy. Prince Khalid, I'm offering you the position of Director of Authentication and Acquisition for the Al Faisal Foundation. You would oversee all manuscript purchases worldwide, lead a team of 15 scholars, and have final authority on any item we consider acquiring. Elena stared at him. The words didn't seem to compute. Prince Khalid. The salary is $850,000 annually, plus housing in either London, Riyadh, or New York. Your choice. Full research support, unlimited travel budget, and access to our complete archive for any academic work you wish to pursue. Elena, barely breathing. That's not possible. Prince Khalid, smiling. I think we've established tonight that you're very good at identifying what's possible and what isn't. This is possible. The only question is whether you'll accept. Elena's mind raced. $850,000. Enough to pay off her entire debt in 6 months. Enough to never work another catering shift. Enough to finish her book, to return to scholarship, to become the person she had always been meant to be. But she had learned something about deals in rooms like this one. Elena. I have conditions. Prince Khalid, raising an eyebrow. I'm listening. Elena, first, I have final say on all authentication decisions. If I say something is fake, it doesn't matter how much your family wants it or how embarrassing it might be to walk away. My word is law. Prince Khalid agreed. That's why I'm hiring you. Elena. Second, I want to establish a fellowship program for graduate students from underrepresented backgrounds. Full funding, tuition, living expenses, research support. 3 scholars per year, selected by merit alone. Prince Khalid. Done. What else? Elena took a breath. This was the one that mattered. Elena. Third, I want the fellowship named after my father, the Miguel Vasquez Scholars. He was a high school history teacher in the Bronx for 32 years. He taught me that knowledge belongs to everyone, not just the people who can afford it. Her voice caught. She steadied it. Elena. He never got to see me finish my doctorate. He never got to see the book I was supposed to write. But I want his name attached to something that matters, something that helps people like me, people who have the talent but not the resources, get the chance they deserve. Prince Khalid was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with something that might have been emotion. Prince Khalid, the Miguel Vasquez Scholars. I think that's the finest thing I've heard all evening. He extended his hand. Prince Khalid, Dr. Vasquez, do we have a deal? Elena looked at his hand, at the card, at the chandelier that had once made her feel so small. She shook his hand. "Elena, we have a deal."